All right. Today I'm joined by Jack Call. Jack, how's it going?
Good.
Jack is going to share a story about encounter with a grizzly bear that stole his bull elk from him. But first, I'd like Jack to introduce himself.
My name is Jack Call. I've been a hunter since I was born, I think, and I'm no kid anymore. Up to 84 years old. I still enjoy getting out into the wilderness, and an excuse that I can find to do it, why, it's good enough. In the way of a little background about the hunt that Zach wanted me to talk about tonight was a story that goes back about 5 years. The area, when I first started hunting it years ago, grizzly bears were not to be found. The last 10 years, that situation has changed dramatically. Every year that I hunted this area, I saw more and more sign. I run into more and more bears. It made the hunting a little too interesting. But 5 years ago, I was hunting during the rut. A camp set up, had been there a couple of days, and there was a small herd of elk that was in and out of that area. I tried to call them with a cow call several times, and the bull would answer me, but he wasn't going to leave his cows. And I was a little afraid of pushing him too much. The third day I was hunting there, they were about 300 yards from my camp. I went up there and tried the same thing, cow call, and he'd answer me, but he wouldn't leave his cows. So I said, well, I got to take a little risk here. I'll try to do a spike squeal. I did, and he immediately shut up, and the next thing I know, I hear hooves pounding coming my direction just as fast as he could. He got to me, but he didn't know exactly where I was, I guess. He missed me by about 20 yards, and I could see him going down over the hill, and I'd never see him again. So I yelled at him, and he yelled he stopped to see what made the noise, and it gave me time to get an arrow into him broadside, and easy shot, 20 yards. And he turned around, started back up the hill the way he'd come down, and he didn't get too far, maybe 50 yards, and that was it for him. And this is early in the morning. I should have mentioned that and this was about 8 o'clock in the morning. By the time I was able to approach him, I said, well, this is going to be the easiest elk I've ever had to carry out of here. And so I skinned out a hindquarter and took it to my camp, had a drink of water, and I was gone about 20 minutes, went back up to the elk, and when I got there, I saw some motion, and I wasn't sure what it was, but whatever it was disappeared into the woods. Well, I said, well, I don't know, I got to get that elk out of here, and so I went up there, and I just got to the elk, and here there was a trail coming down the hill right towards me, and here come this sow and her two cubs, and she got within about 50 yards of me, and then she noticed I was there. You could just see her attention focused on me, and here she comes, fast as she could come, right at me. And I'm not quite sure what to do, but I yelled at the top of my lungs, and she slammed on the brakes. I was so relieved to see that. And she turned around and started back up the hill, and pretty soon she didn't go too far, and she veered off into the timber, and that piece of timber that she went into came right behind me. She could have come through that piece of timber and got in behind me there, and I'd have never known it.
So sorry to interrupt, Jack, but how close did she get to you before she slammed on the brakes?
I'd say it was probably 25 yards.
And how far were you from the carcass?
It was right at my feet.
It was right there.
Yeah.
All right. So did you have any protection on you, like bear protection?
Yes. Yeah, I had bear spray, and I had a revolver, 357, and they were, let's see, I can't remember if I had the revolver out, but I did have the bear spray out and ready.
Mm-hmm. Now, just thinking back to the first time you told me this story a while back, it was probably a few years ago.
5 years.
Yeah, I remember at that time, I think you'd mentioned that you had left your revolver next to the elk carcass.
I had.
Yeah, so it was still laying there by the elk when you came in.
Yeah, it was there. Everything was there, and I couldn't believe that I did that. It was pretty dumb. But so anyway, I decided that I didn't want that elk that bad, and the odds were pretty bad, I saw with cubs in deep timber, and so I said, I'm getting out of here, and I did. I went back to my camp, and I called the Wyoming Game and Fish office, told them what had happened, and they said, okay, well, I knew the guy that I was talking to there, and he says, well, I will notify the wardens what had happened there, so in case you get stopped, only have a quarter of an elk in your truck, why they won't accuse you of wasting the meat. I thanked him for that, and I got out of there. And that was 5 years ago, and it made me think. I realized that how dangerous that place was getting to hunt, and I said, this is not a place that one man should be by himself. You need at least two people to hunt together, so one guy can be watching what's going on around you while you're cutting up an elk. And so I haven't hunted back there at that same area for 5 years. Wasn't really having any plans of doing it again. And then I had an opportunity to get together with Zach this last year, and go up, and we were able to get together and go up there and hunt.
Yeah, we walked right past the spot where that bear had taken your elk from you. I remember that on this hunt.
Yeah.
And I was happy to have somebody with me. So going back to your experience, by the way, that hunt ended successfully for both of us. That's another story in itself.
Yeah.
Going back to your story, had you ever had many encounters with grizzlies? You said way back when there were pretty much no grizzlies in there, right? Or at least you never had issues.
Yeah, when I first started hunting, it was at least 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I didn't start seeing them till maybe 10, 15 years ago.
So did you ever have any other issues with grizzlies up there?
Oh yeah. The last couple of years that I hunted up there, one time, I had the camp set up in the same exact place, and I had hunted in the morning without any luck, and I'd come back in the middle of the day, and I had a 8x12 tent set up, a wall tent, and I was in the wall tent cooking up some lunch. All of a sudden, I never heard a sound, but all of a sudden something hit the side of that tent, and whatever it was big enough that it knocked a little table that I had my lunch sitting on, knocked it over into my lap, and I still never heard anything. I don't know what is going on. Somebody's playing a trick on me or something. Anyway, I got up, and if you're familiar with wall tents, you know that they've got a door. An 8-foot wide tent has a door, and there's a pole right in the middle between the one end of the 8-foot and the other. And so the pole is about 4 feet from each end. So when I got up, I just walked over to where that pole was. It's the highest part of the tent. So it'd be just normal to go out through that way, and I stuck my head out the door, and I just happened to look to my right, and there was the sight I didn't want to see. There was the head of a grizzly that was bigger than a basketball by far, and it was just had his head looking around the corner of the tent at me, and I wasn't sure what to do, but he wasn't moving, and I said, luckily I had some bear spray that I kept in my tent right there, and I could just reach back and I grabbed that spray and stuck my head back out, and this bear hadn't moved an inch, and I turned that bottle of pepper spray loose on him, and he was so close, if he was on the corner of the tent and I'm in the middle, that's only 4 feet apart. And he was so close that when the repellent with the pepper was hitting him with the force, and it was blowing the hair back.
I can just picture that in my mind.
And he closed his eyes, for a minute, and just let it come, and all of a sudden he had enough.
I can laugh at it now, but I'm sure in the moment it was a little hairy. But I can just picture that in my mind, what that must have looked like and what was going through that bear's head.
Well, I'll tell you, I was one relieved elk hunter at that time when that bear turned around and ran, and
you probably taught it a heck of a lesson. Hopefully.
So after it left, the woods is fairly open there. You could see quite a ways. Anyway, after the bear left, I come out around the tent and make sure he had left. And when I did, here about 25 yards from me was 3 more grizzlies.
Holy cow!
They were probably 2 year. I think maybe. 2 of them were 2-year-olds, and one of them might be a little older than that even. And they were all standing up on their hind legs looking at me. And I'm not done here yet. And they just stood there and stared at me for a couple minutes. And we stared each other down. And finally they decided to leave because they kept looking to see where Mama went. And they couldn't see her anymore, so they decided to go too. So they took off running, and that was the last I had him in camp. And I was sure glad of that.
I bet. Yeah, that's pretty wild to have them that close. So when you go up there to hunt, you spend quite a bit of days in a row up there when you're hunting, right?
Yeah. I used to go up there until I shot something. I mean, I didn't come home. I'd go. Sometimes I went the 1st of September, but most of the time, after I hunted there a few years, I decided that was kind of a waste, so I'd go up there about the 8th, 9th of September. And if I hadn't had any luck, I carried a rifle along with me, so when the rifle season opened, I could hunt with the rifle, and usually that didn't last more than a day or two. It was because I had been there long enough to know where the elk were. Well, let's face it, it's easier with a rifle.
Sure.
A lot easier.
Yeah. Well, going back to your original story, the bear that took your elk, I remember when you told me about that. I can't remember where I was at the time. I was not hunting with you, obviously, but I remember you had mentioned to me, maybe even that night or the next day, and I remember I was gun-ho on going up there, and it was probably foolish of me a little bit, but you said it was maybe your nicest bull you'd ever gotten, or close to it.
No, but yeah, it was a nice 6-point bull.
Yeah, I remember it kind of upset me to think that bear took your bull. So I had talked to some friends, and we kind of had a party put together. We were planning on going up there and at least trying to retrieve that head, but you kind of talked me out of it, and probably for the best. But I remember you had told me that it didn't mean, or it wasn't that big of a deal to you, being that you had shot it with a crossbow instead of your bow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and can you tell me a little bit more about why you were hunting with a crossbow that year?
I had an accident that you wouldn't believe, but I had to have my shoulder replaced my left shoulder. It made it very hard to shoot a bow, or impossible to shoot a regular bow at that time. So just to give me an opportunity to hunt the archery season, I invested in a crossbow, and that was the only thing the only elk I shot with that crossbow. I've shot quite a few deer with it in the ensuing years, but now I'm trying to get to the point where I can hunt with a very light compound bow again, and I'd hope to be able to pull enough poundage that someday I'll be able to.
You can get back at it.
Yeah, get back at it.
Yeah, I just remember being impressed by your answer as far as, or what you told me about it not meaning as much to you because you shot it with a crossbow. You're a true bow hunter that I can relate to in that aspect. Not to bash on crossbows, they have their place, obviously. I mean, it allowed you to get an elk, right?
Yeah, well, and since then, I've killed a lot of deer with that I wouldn't have been able to hunt at all over the last 5 years.
Well,
so.
And going back to your injury, for those who don't know Jack, like I do, Jack stays in pretty darn good shape, always out walking, hiking, lifting weights. And you were actually walking down I guess it's the highway here, not too far from the house, and a box spring mattress blew out of somebody's truck, and it knocked you out, didn't it? Isn't that how you ended up with the shoulder injury?
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What a fluke thing! Somebody didn't have their box spring tied down.
Yeah, they went by me pretty fast, and I didn't see it coming. It came from behind me. It just flew through the air and hit me in the head and the shoulder, tore my rotator cuff muscles off the shoulder, and give me a good goosebump on the top of my head. Yeah, that put me out of commission for a long time. I couldn't do much with that arm, but gradually it got to where I could use it enough to get some muscles back in that arm, and got to last fall I was able to shoot a 40-pound compound bow again, but I overdid it, I think, trying to get ready for hunting season, and I injured something in my other arm, my good arm, and so I had to give it up for about 4 or 5 months. I didn't do anything much, but now I'm on the mend, trying to get the strength back, and I'm getting close to the point where I can pull a compound bow, even a small one, hopefully this fall.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yes.
You're as dedicated as you are. I wouldn't have any doubts that'll happen. So, but again, just to kind of backtrack, we had mentioned that area or that spot where you actually had that grizzly take your elk. We actually walked right past that spot this hunting season. That's the first time I think we've hunted together in, a number of years. A little backstory, my son, Brooks, he's 14 now. He shot his second bull with a bow this September, and I decided I would go up the following week and see if I could get a bull of my own. And you had offered to come help out, so we actually went back to that spot. Neither one of us had been back there for quite a while.
Yes. Yeah,
we might as well tell that story too, I guess, since we're together and it happened kind of in the same area.
Okay.
Yeah. So we got to camp. I don't remember what day it was, but it was late afternoon. We were setting up camp. I was a little antsy, I'll admit. I wanted to get out and hunt. I was excited to be back in that spot because it'd been so long since I'd been there. And I remember I had to kind of talk you out of setting up camp or pausing our camp setup so we could get out there and hunt.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I think it was maybe 5 o'clock, 5:30.
Yeah,
we were in the
time.
Yeah, we were in the middle of setting up our camp, and I said, Jack, it's about that time. I think we should go hunt. You reluctantly agreed, and so we took off. And I remember we walked past that spot. It's not very far. What would you say? How far from camp?
300 yards.
300 yards to where you had that grizzly take your bull. So, of course, we're both packing. I usually pack a 10 millimeter with hardened lead bullets, and then, of course, bear spray as well. And you had your pistol and bear spray, if I remember right. I remember you making note of the spot as we passed it, where that grizzly had taken your bull, and we continued walking along that ridge, and I don't think we were 5-10 minutes into our hike when we heard that first bull bugle, and I couldn't hardly believe we were hearing elk already. We were again 10 minutes into our hunt, so we continued down that ridge, And I think there were two of them bugling back and forth. One was fairly close and one was quite a ways off, if I remember right.
That's what I remember.
Yeah. So we started working our way along that ridge, and I remember we had discussed where we should set up and actually try calling.
Yeah.
And the wind wasn't perfect. It wasn't great, but I thought, well, let's move forward just a little bit more before we make any sound at all. We hadn't called at all, just letting those bulls do all the calling back and forth. Decided to move forward just a little bit more to see if we could get a little bit better angle on the wind. And then found a little opening there in the trees. I dropped down basically right there in front of a tree. And that's one thing I've learned over the years is I like to set up in front of cover with elk. You've hunted with whitetails a heck of a lot more than me, but do you do the same thing with whitetails? You try to get behind the cover?
Yeah, I've been able to have whitetails walk up very close to me. If I had my back up against a good sized tree, and I didn't move, they come right in. I could almost touch them.
Yeah, I like setting up in front because then you don't have to worry about not being able to shoot because you've got something in front of you. So I dropped down on my knees. There were a couple trees in that clearing that I kind of hunkered down in front of, and you took cover about 5 yards behind me.
Yeah, it
behind
was
a tree,
pretty close. And I was behind a tree, but I was stretched out on the ground as low as I could get too.
We had this bull. We knew he was somewhere down below us. We were right on the crest of this ridge. Had an arrow knocked. I'd kind of ranged a few things around the meadow in front of me there, and there was probably, from where I was to the edge of the trees was maybe 10 yards or so, 12 yards, maybe a little bit more, 15. Ranged a few things. Then I finally let out that first call, and that bull replied right away. Then he knew we were in town, and I was still thinking we were not even hardly 20 minutes into this hunt. This is going to be like, what are the chances this bull's going to come in and give me a shot?
Yeah.
But I was thinking also that because it'd been a while since you got to experience an archery elk hunt, I was willing to shoot whatever come out of that timber. I was thinking, well, if it's a spike, if it's a raghorn, I don't care what it is. If we can get one this close to the truck and this soon, and for you to experience it, by gosh, I'm going to shoot it. After I let out that first call, he called back, he responded, and then we kind of sat there for a minute. And then I called again, and boy, when he responded, I could tell he'd cut the distance big time.
Much closer.
Yep. And I lipped the words to you, he's coming, and I did the little walking fingers. And that's when you took cover 5 yards behind me, behind the tree there. I patiently waited. I don't even know if I called again, but he called back at me, and he had cut the distance in half again. And I could tell that sucker was just out of sight. I couldn't hardly believe he was actually coming. Again, being that we were 20 minutes into this hunt.
Yeah.
I was like, how can this work out so perfectly for us? Sure enough, I see his antlers there show up, and I was trying to decide when to draw the bow. Of course, that's always one of the toughest parts of an archery hunt. Yeah, he decided to go left instead of right, and happened to walk behind a big tree. That's when I drew the bow. He came out. He come around the corner there from all this brush and stood there. I don't know if he was 7 yards from me in the wide open, maybe 10 max. It wasn't far, and just stopped looking around, and he kind of gave me a slight quartering frontal. And regardless of what you think about frontal shots, I've taken 3 now, I think, on bulls, and they're pretty devastating if you know where to aim. And I let that frontal go and saw the big burst of blood out of his chest, and I think he ran, would you say, 35 yards down the hill?
Yeah, 35, 40 yards, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'll bet he was dead within 10 seconds.
Yeah, it couldn't have been long.
At least he was on the ground that quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, explain what you saw from your point of view.
Well, like I said, I was laying down on the ground. I didn't want to spoil this, but I could see. My one eye was high enough that I could see a little bit, and then all of a sudden, here an elk walked into my view, and he was, not very far from me, and I wondered what is going to happen here. I never more than got that thought on my mind when I heard that bow go off, and the elk was spun around and took off, and then I knew what was going on. I'm glad I got to see him when he come in there and stopped and looked.
Oh yeah, I'm I'm excited you got to witness that as well. And I just remember, again, being kind of overwhelmed by the whole experience. I felt pretty cool and collected during the shot, but it's kind of gotten that way for me. A lot of times I feel okay, pretty calm during the shot, but then the adrenaline just dumps.
Yeah.
Like as soon as the shot is off, all of a sudden it's like it just hits me.
Yeah, I could tell that you were pretty excited. No doubt about it.
You kept commenting about how excited I was. So I remember I turned around and I had the GoPro going on my riser the whole time. I had it recording. And so I got the shot, but reviewing the footage, I kind of do a fist pump and whatever, and then I turn my attention to you, and you come walking out from behind that tree with a big old smile on your face, and I just couldn't believe what was going on. It was just so surreal. We were 20 minutes into this hunt in an area that we used to love to hunt together and hadn't been able to for a while, and all of a sudden we've got a 6-point bull on the ground. Like I said, I was willing to shoot whatever came through those trees, and for it to be a pretty decent 6-point was just awesome. Couldn't believe it. Yeah. It was pretty special, actually, to be able to share that with you. And
that was exciting. I couldn't have got more excited if I was doing it all myself.
Yeah, pretty awesome. So we had kind of a late night getting it out of there, but at least it wasn't too far. I probably took fewer trips than I should have, but I find I have a tendency to do that in grizzly country. I load up pretty heavy, trying to limit my number of trips back, and they're pretty crushing loads usually. But we were able to get it out in just a couple trips. I think we had it out by, I was back to camp by about 11:30.
You say we got it out. I'm not sure that I deserve to be included in that.
Oh, sure you do. You helped out. So.
I filled my day pack with back straps, and that was my contribution. and here's Zach's going down through the woods with a front quarter, a back quarter, and the head off that. I couldn't believe I couldn't have moved 5 feet carrying a load like that.
Oh, not too far from that area, I've got another elk story that involved just me, solo hunt, grizzly country, and a late night pack out. I worked till 3:30 in the morning trying to get a bull out, and just crushing loads, but it's not much fun, but we made it work, and you helped. You, at the very least, Jack, you kept me from having to go back in there one more time. Because as I'm walking back in there and it's starting to rain, and you hear the raindrops hitting all the trees, then you can't hear those little sticks snapping and stuff as easy as that grizzly sneaking up on you. So with that rain falling and the clouds rolling through the trees, it was getting a little bit eerie as I went in for that last load, but made lots of noise and had my bear protection on me and whatever. So, but it was just, like I said, pretty darn awesome to be able to share that experience with you. And that's one thing, once my kids became old enough to hunt and really fish, I think things changed for me. My perspectives changed. And it becomes a lot more about the story and how things unfold than the final result, I guess.
You're creating memories, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. And that hunt, I would have had, it could have been a much bigger bull. Things could have been different in many ways, but the fact that it unfolded the way it did is what made it awesome and what made it a true trophy and a great story and experience. Mm-hmm. And that it's just become more about that for me nowadays than maybe the size of the animal or anything else like that. So, but I just appreciate you sharing that story with me and going on that hunt this fall with me. So,
well, it was a lot of fun. I'll never forget it.
Neither will I.
Hi there, just a quick note. I've posted a short video from the hunt Jack and I discussed during this podcast. If you'd like to see the shot that I take on this bull and our excitement afterward, head on over to the Zach Even YouTube channel. I believe the name of the video is Archery Elk at 8 Yards with an Old Friend. Enjoy, and thanks again for listening.
I see him. I think I might have heard him go down.
Right over there.
Good job.
Did you see it?
Yeah, first I seen him, he was already in here.
Okay.
And then he stopped. And I could see his head. And then I heard you shoot. I was afraid you weren't seeing.
I took the frontal because he wasn't turning broadside, and then he stopped and he looked at me. So I thought, I took that frontal and I saw the blood.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah.
I wondered because I thought he was coming at an angle to
No,
you.
no. So he came around that.
Yeah, so he was looking right at you.
He came around that tree right there. Come up here and stopped. I was sitting right there.
Yeah.
We've been hunting for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Jack and I used to hunt this spot a lot.
You're good
Bray,
luck.
come on.